Samsung's FE series has always had this one simple promise: give you a true flagship experience, but for a fraction of the price. The new S25 FE is the latest phone to take on that challenge. But where do they cut corners to get that price down? Is it a genuine bargain or is it a bust? So let's dive in and find out.
I mean, that's the dream, right? Getting a device that looks, feels, and acts like a top of the line phone, but without that painful top of the line price tag. It's a fantastic pitch, but we all know the devil's always in the details, especially in tech.
And yeah, that's the big question we're tackling today. We're going to break down everything: the upgrades, the compromises, and some of the frankly strange decisions Samsung made to figure out if this phone is the real deal or just a clever illusion. Okay, so to really understand the S25 FE, you first have to understand the battlefield it's fighting on. This phone competes in that super fierce flagship killer category. That's a space just filled with ambitious phones, all trying to punch way above their weight class. Basically, the whole idea is to give you maybe 80 or 90% of what a real flagship offers, but for something like 60% of the cost. They make these really strategic cuts, and they're hoping you won't really feel those cuts in your day-to-day life. So let's see exactly where Samsung decided to trim the fat. So, where did they make those cuts? And what did they actually upgrade? Let's start with the stuff you can actually see and feel: the design and the screen, and how it really compares to last year's S24 FE. Now, what's really cool here is how things have evolved, even if it's subtle. Samsung finally got rid of that glossy fingerprint magnet back for a much nicer, more premium feeling matte frosted glass. It's also thinner and lighter, which just makes it feel better in the hand. These are the kinds of small changes that really add up to a device that just feels more polished. All right, turning to the screen, we've got two really big upgrades here. First, the bezels are finally a bit slimmer, giving it that more modern all-screen look, although you still have a little bit of a chin at the bottom, but hey, it's an improvement. Second, and this is a big one, the panel is now an LTPO display. That's a true flagship feature that lets the screen change its refresh rate on the fly, which should help save some battery. And this, right here, this is one of my favorite quality of life fixes. On the old phone, the always-on display had this weird, faint glow that just kind of looked cheap. With the new LTPO panel, black is actually black. So when the phone is just sitting on your desk, it finally looks like the premium phone it's trying to be. Okay, let's get into what's under the hood. This is where things get really impressive and honestly a little weird. This phone is packed with a ton of power, but it comes with some very strange limitations. So, here's the big news. The S25 FE is running on the Exynos 2400 chip. And get this, that's the very same chip you'll find in the way more expensive Galaxy S24 Plus. So, on paper, this thing should absolutely fly. And you know what? For everyday stuff, it totally does. Apps pop open, scrolling is super smooth. It really does feel like a flagship. But then, you fire up a huge game like PUBG, and it's locked at 60 frames per second. That's actually a downgrade from the S24 FE, which could hit 90. It's a super weird software limitation on a chip that we know can handle way more. Now, to be fair, Samsung did a much better job with cooling this time around. The S25 FE runs way cooler than the old one, but part of that magic is because the software is a bit more aggressive about throttling or slowing down the processor to keep those temperatures down. It's a classic trade-off. It's more comfortable to hold, but you might not get that top-end power for as long. But performance isn't just about raw speed. It's also about how long the phone will last. And on that front, Samsung has delivered a massive, industry-leading win. Just look at that number, 7. We're talking 7 years of Android and security updates. That is the best software support you can get in the Android world, period. It adds incredible long-term value. All right, let's talk cameras. After all those changes we just saw in the design and performance, the story here is kind of funny. It's all about what stayed the same, except for one very, very specific upgrade. Yeah, if you're looking at the back cameras and feeling a bit of deja vu, you're not wrong. The hardware, from that 50 megapixel main camera to the 8 megapixel telephoto, is 100% identical to last year's phone. They were good cameras then, they're still good now, but there have been absolutely zero hardware changes on the back.
So, where did the camera budget go? Well, it looks like Samsung put all their eggs in one basket. They focused everything on the front of the phone. The one big hardware change is all about that selfie camera. And honestly, it really pays off. The new 12 megapixel sensor, plus some better image processing, gives you selfies with way more accurate and just pleasant looking skin tones. It's a really noticeable improvement that brings the selfie game up to a true flagship level for sure. Okay, so we've covered the design, the screen, the weird performance, the cameras. Let's tie this all together and answer the big question: who should actually buy this thing?
So let's break it down with a final scorecard. The pros are really compelling. You get that premium design, that beautiful LTPO screen, faster 45-watt charging, and of course, that unbeatable 7 years of updates. But on the flip side, the cons are pretty significant too, like that aging telephoto lens, the bizarre 60 FPS cap in gaming, and no real improvement in battery life. And I gotta say, that charging speed, that's a bigger deal than you might think. Bumping it up to 45 watts finally brings the FE model in line with Samsung's actual top tier phones, and that makes a real difference in convenience day to day. Okay, so here's the bottom line. It's actually pretty simple. If you're holding an S24 FE right now, just keep it. The upgrades are nice, but they're not worth shelling out the money for a whole new phone. But if you're in the market for a new phone right now in this price range, the S25 FE is absolutely the one to get. It's just a better phone all around. And all of this kind of brings us back to where we started. The S25 FE is a phone of contradictions. It's got a flagship processor that can't play games at its full potential, a flagship build with a few little design compromises, and a camera system that's part brand new and part really old. It really makes you wonder, right? Is that line between a flagship and a flagship killer getting blurrier by the day? What do you think?